Hi, I'm Caroline Mitchell, canine behaviourist at Good Doggy. If you've been struggling with your dog's behaviour training plan, maybe it started well and the dog's behaviour started to regress, or maybe there's elements of it that don't seem to be working quite as you expected. It could be because the underlying issue or the underlying need has not been fully addressed yet. Symptomatic training that focuses on the symptom behaviour tends to have temporary changes. It can sometimes feel quite dramatic, but when the need has not been addressed, then the symptomatic changes will then start to roll back towards old habits. And I think needs really are what underpins all of our behaviour and our choices. They're much stronger than any kind of learned behaviour. I think about when we first went into lockdown at the very start. We weren't getting human contact, we weren't socialising with other humans as much, but at the very early stages, that didn't matter to us as much. But as time went on, that need became stronger. The longer it wasn't met and fulfilled, for many of us, the more important that became, and the more that started to prioritise other behaviours. And we're seeing in the end of lockdown, people were going to all kinds of different lengths to get that human contact. People were breaking rules and laws just so that they could meet people and socialise. So that need override everything we knew, and all of the training and all of the rules and the behaviours that we expected of ourselves. It became more important than them. So I recently read a story online, and it was about a group of polar bears. And polar bears are normally quite aggressive and territorial animals. They don't mix well with other families of bears. They don't mix well with other species. They're quite aggressive. And this is because for polar bears especially, food and territory are pretty scarce. So they don't want to share what little they have or what little they might have with any other families. They're looking after themselves. While there is not an abundant amount of food, then they're going to protect what they do have available or what they might be able to get. So their territory also contains their resources of food. It's not just about what food they actually have right now, it's about the availability of food. So they often fight over food and they fight over territory just to protect their own selves and their families. Food and territory are linked. These are on the second layer of Maslow's pyramid, which I'll talk a little bit about later on. But the story was about a whale. It was a very large whale that had washed up on a beach, and it attracted polar bears in the area. So polar bears started to show up, and because there was so much food, they were actually all able to eat together. So they put aside their food aggression and their territorial aggression and all of those kinds of behaviours. And because there was such an abundance of food, they were happy to share. This whale was going to last a really long time. But actually it went a bit further than that. So all of these polar bears, for the first time, all tucking in, all eating together. And once they'd finished and their bellies were full and they couldn't put any more food in there if they tried, then they started to play together and socialise with each other. And this is not a normal polar bear behaviour. So Maslow's pyramid shows us that when our most primal needs are not met, our behaviour changes. And it also changes when our needs are met. So these polar bears that don't normally play together put aside their territorial behaviour, their declining food, all of that. Nobody went in there and trained these bears not to guard food, not to guard each other, not to be territorial. They just stopped those behaviours because the underlying need had been met. So once that underlying need had been met, they were able to then fulfil other needs which were less important and less urgent on Maslow's pyramid. Our dogs are the same. So when we address the needs, their behaviour changes too. So this is Maslow's pyramid here. We can see that the bottom layer represents the most vital of needs. These are the most urgent needs. These are the needs that must be fulfilled above all else. So this is your food, your water, your sleep. You'll see on this bottom section of the pyramid that reproduction and exercise are both there as well. And these needs are just as powerful. They can influence behavior in just the same way. They're very big motivators of behavior. But as humans, we don't often prioritize those needs enough in our dogs. So, for example, an unneutered male dog may be performing some sexual behaviors, but people will try to train those behaviors out of their dogs. We'll use different kinds of training methods to try and teach them alternative behaviors to those that are driven by that need for sexual behavior, for breeding, reproducing. But that need is right on the very bottom of the pyramid. So there's no amount of treats is going to stop your dog from feeling sexually frustrated. And the more sexually frustrated we get, in just the same way as the more people lacked human contact, the hungrier a bear gets, the more they'll protect that need. And the more important it becomes, the less important what we want will become. So the thing on the bottom of that list, a few of those a dog can manage without for a few days. They can manage without exercise for a little while, the same as they can manage without food. Humans also can manage without food for quite a period of time. We can manage a few days before we really start to worry. But we can see there that exercise is right next to food. That means that a lack of exercise can cause just the same amount of problems as a lack of food or sex. So these are really, really important needs, and they need to be addressed with the same priority as we would address the important ones like food and water. We would never let our dogs go without food for too long, so we should also apply the same kind of thought process to the other important needs at the bottom, including reproduction and food. Of course, most people are not going to get their dog a girlfriend. So if this is a very important need, especially for your dog, then it's maybe something that should be discussed with the vet, and maybe neutering is the best way to help them get past that need so it becomes less important to them on a daily basis, so that actually they can focus on other things that are more important, like socializing with other dogs and things like that. We can see what happens when some street dogs have been rescued from the street from points of starvation. We can see what happens to them when they've obviously experienced real hunger when they've been on the streets. Not the kind of hunger that we know about. This is genuine hunger, real starvation. And this can cause long-term emotional damage. So those needs and that order and that pyramid are really essential for us when we start to figure out what we should be doing when we're solving behavior problems. So anything that is linked to the very bottom of the pyramid, that needs to be addressed before we can start worrying about the actual symptomatic behavior, the one that's the behavior that we can see. Just like those polar bears, they solved the food and resource problems. Sure, it was temporary, but those problems were solved. So they were able to relax. Those no longer became a problem. That wasn't an unfulfilled need anymore. And they were able to relax and play with each other. And play, creativity, that's right there at the top of the pyramid. So it's the least important need for an animal. So it's the last thing that they will prioritize. Everything else is more important than that. So moving up the pyramid, so we had the physiological needs at the bottom, and they will always be the most important. But moving up, we now have our safety needs. So this includes not just our own safety, but safety of our possessions. That's toys, bed, anything that your dog believes that is theirs. Resources, this is the availability of food and water. So when the area that a dog lives in, or in the polar bear example, the environment that they were living in, when food's resources are scarce, then that becomes an important resource within the territory. If there's plenty of food in the territory, then that becomes a less important thing for them to worry about. The same with dogs. When they feel like there's easily accessible food and water, then that need has been fulfilled. But that's in that safety need. Also, territory and guarding is in this section. So safety covers your own space in terms of how safe it feels, how secure the boundaries feel. And it can feel unsafe for a dog if your boundaries are regularly threatened by people maybe walking past. Dogs that live next to access ways or alleyways often struggle with this. People that live with houses that back onto parks can struggle with kind of territorial concerns, because there's always another dog or another person walking next to your home, next to your boundary. And also houses that have an open door policy can feel quite chaotic to dogs that are concerned about safety and about boundaries and territory. People that just come and go as they please, even if they are really good friends or family members, people your dog knows really well. Just the idea of non-family members just coming in, and I mean family in terms of the people that actually live in their home, it's coming in and out at random times, can be quite unsettling for dogs that are really worried about their territory and about that safety need as well. So when this happens, this can affect their behaviour in lots of ways. They can become quite anxious, they can become aggressive, they start to maybe bark a lot. So there's lots of different things. They might start to break rules in the house and things like that. So when those needs are affected and threatened, then that changes their behaviour in those kinds of ways. Most often I see aggression and anxiety problems, and it could be anxiety of any kind. It could be anxiety about meeting other dogs, not necessarily just at home, but on your walks, separation anxiety, just an overall concern about noises and things like that. So these things will happen whenever that need feels like it's being threatened. And that's important to know. It's not about whether it is being threatened. It's not about whether your dog is safe or isn't. It's about how they perceive their safety. So when you take a step back and look at it from the dog's point of view, how are they feeling? Do they feel insecure in a kind of chaotic environment, or are they happy enough that everything is fine and they are safe and secure within your home? So that's the next level of the pyramid. Those bottom two layers are the most important, and those are the bottom layers that will cause the most amount of behaviour problems. And then moving up, we have our social needs. This is our friends and our relationships. And this is about meaningful relationships. It's not about how many people we know or how many people we are connected to on Facebook or whatever. These are genuine connection-based relationships. These are people that we are really connected to. These are our partners, our parents, our children, and our best friends. You know, these are the ones that fall into this pyramid. And dogs have this section of their pyramid too. We prioritize this section a lot. It's what caused us, obviously, to break lockdown rules so that we could meet other people and form these relationships. And these kind of relationships are important to our dogs first, also because feeling safe and feeling secure with a loving family and a loving base around us adds resilience, and resilience is good for avoiding anxiety, but also a lack of really good, meaningful relationships can cause separation anxiety. So just like a person who doesn't feel like they're connected to other people in real life, you can be in a room full of people but still feel lonely in that room because you don't have connections with those people. Dogs feel the same way. And when that happens, then that causes separation anxiety, which is really interesting because the standard advice on the internet when it comes to separation anxiety is to kind of distance yourself, almost to increase that distance between you and your dog, to disconnect from them a little bit, to try and reduce their dependence on you. But actually, the more you do that, then the more that connection gets broken and the less safe they feel and the more lonely they feel. So when somebody says to you that to solve separation anxiety, you need to become more distant from your dog, you need to push them away, then this is the exact wrong advice. This is the opposite of what you should be doing, because that love, that connection builds up confidence and resilience and helps them with their separation anxiety. So when we spoil that, we don't have those good relationships with our dogs, relationships that are built on trust, that are built on building confidence and resilience, then that top part of the pyramid will remain unfulfilled. So we can't do any more. We can't solve anxiety problems. We can't teach them to be confident. We can't help them with different things because we don't have that really important connection that we need. So we've talked a wee bit about needs that need to be fulfilled in order that our dogs can change their own behaviour, which is much better than us trying to change it. Our dogs also have their own needs and their own personalities, so that needs to be taken in consideration too. They're not cars, they're not radios. They are sort of breed descriptions, that kind of vague guidelines as to how a dog might turn out, but we shouldn't rely on these. I know plenty of Labradors who don't care about food, and Beagles that have perfect recalls, Collies that don't chase balls, Dachshunds that don't bark. I've met Terriers that don't shred or kill their toys, and throughout all these years, I've met plenty of Greyhounds that don't chase their cats, and they actually really love their cat friends at home. So whilst we can kind of suggest that certain breeds might have certain higher needs in certain areas, we just can't depend on it. Some dogs are more social than others. Some dogs care about food more than others. Some are more territorial than others. Just like my needs vary from yours and your needs vary from your kids, our dogs are all different as well. So we need to stop thinking about them as an animal. They are an animal, but that does not define them. They are a dog, but we need to look beyond that. We need to look beyond their breed, and we need to look at exactly who is Barney. What does Barney like? Barney's a Labrador, but he doesn't like food. He doesn't chase balls. What Barney really likes is shredding his toys and chewing things and, playing with people in the park. So we have to kind of accept that Barney might not be the Labrador. He might not have the same behaviours as other Labradors. Some dogs do some things, some dogs do others. So that's not a reliable way for us to look at Barney and understand who Barney is and what his specific needs are. Barney and Lola are two different dogs. Let's think about Lola. She's a Greyhound. She loves to cuddle up with her little cat friends at night. She doesn't chase dogs in the park. She doesn't like to run. She's kind of, she's just a really easygoing, sensible kind of Greyhound. Her needs will differ from Barney's needs, not just because she's a different dog, but also her experiences are different. What's happened to her in the past will give her a greater or lesser tolerance of things. So just like those rescued street dogs, they have a very low tolerance for being without food. They've maybe really experienced starvation. They know what it feels like to be hungry. So that dog is not going to do well if you feed them late or if they only get one meal a day or whatever. Another dog that's never understood that and never known that will never show any kind of concern or consideration to food. It's just always been there. It always will be there. And it doesn't affect the way that they think, and it doesn't affect the way that they behave. But bad experiences will make dogs maybe more sensitive to passerby. Maybe they are not so good at making friends. Maybe they made mistakes in the past. Maybe a different dog really likes to chase cats because they chased cats in the past. Cats run away and they found that to be really good fun. So we shouldn't make assumptions about our pet dogs just based on the fact that they are a dog and they are a beagle or a German Shepherd or a Staffy or anything like that. We need to look beyond that and find out who exactly they are and what their specific needs are. And when we can do that, then we can start looking at how do we fix those needs and solve those needs. So it's not just about Maslow's pyramid, although that gives us a really, really good place to start. When we're looking, dogs will pretty much always follow the pyramid in order of priority, but differences of breed and experience and age as well, all these things will make a difference to how your specific dog prioritizes their own needs and what's important to them. So I've spoken about the sort of top layer of the pyramid. That's all about confidence, play, and it's about learning and creativity as well. So when we prioritize the top part of the pyramid and we try to change a behavior just using training, then we are not going to be as successful as we would if we looked at the bottom of the pyramid first. The top part of the pyramid is important. Training is important. Changing habits is important. But if we haven't looked at the bottom of the pyramid first and fulfilled all of those important unfulfilled needs, then all we're doing really is putting a sticky plaster onto a broken leg. the leg is still broken, and you know, it might help for a little while, but eventually we're going to see that initial need creeping back in again. So those polar bears, once that need had been filled, they were full of whale, they'd stuffed their bellies full. The next day, that might not have been the case, and they might be hungry again. Their behaviour will revert. So no amount of positive reinforcement or counter conditioning or clicker training or any of those types of methods that trainers will talk about when they're trying to change a dog's behaviour, none of those would have changed the way that those polar bears would have behaved the next day. We can't just fulfill the need on day one and then give them lots of positive reinforcement and the next day expect them to still do it. So we have to keep on making sure these needs are fulfilled, making sure that if our dog is thinking just about reproduction all the time, that we fix that. We can't override those needs with training forever. So we use the top part to teach new behaviours and create new habits. But the bottom part of it is the bit that underpins everything. You can change behaviour just by changing and fulfilling the needs at the bottom of the pyramid. Or if you don't fulfill those needs, you can change a behaviour. If your dog feels unsafe, then you can create an anxiety. If you make a dog feel in a certain way, you can make them quite territorial. So these kinds of methods might be used in training protection dogs and things like that. So when we change the need, then the behaviour changes itself. But we can't just train a dog to behave in a different way while that unbalance is happening at the very bottom of the pyramid. Once we've solved that, then we can worry about breaking the habits, and the top part of the pyramid is brilliant for that, but I'm going to talk more about that in the next video. So come back for that, and let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to know if this kind of resonates with you, if you've been struggling with your dog's behaviour, and if you think that maybe there's something in terms of needs that need fulfilled that perhaps has been missed in your plan. Let me know, and I'll see you soon. Take care for now. Bye bye.